like we do about this time, we are here to bring you the latest in Gator sports and beyond. Our X and O's theme continues tonight as James D. Virgilio of the Gator Nation football podcast is here to break down quarterback DJ Lagway and what makes the Gator offense go or maybe not go. The first coaches poll has been released and the Gators sit at 17th in the country according to the coaches. Is that too hot, too cold, or just right? Sights and sounds from Tuesday's practice. Kicks of the week is in the building. And of course, we play Hyper Have At It as we talk Gators and much more. The Sidelines Live team would like to thank our sponsors, Meldon Law and Titan MRI and Imaging. Please like and subscribe to the Lowdown with Loren Meadows on YouTube and Facebook, and follow yours truly on Instagram at Ohio Gator for Life and X at Real Ohio Gator. So let's get to it. Obviously, the Gators in full practice mode today, getting after it. We'll have some notes from our friend of the show, Zach Goodall, who was able to attend practice today for a short time, as well as the coaches poll. And first coaches poll released of the year as follows: Texas, followed by Ohio State, Penn State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Clemson at 6, Oregon 7, Alabama 8, LSU 9, Miami rounds out the top 10, followed by Arizona State at 11, Illinois at number 12, 13 South Carolina, 14 Michigan, 15 Ole Miss, SMU is at 16. The Florida Gators come in at 17, just ahead of future foe Tennessee at 18, Indiana at 19, Kansas State 20, Texas A&M 21, Iowa State ties Texas A&M for 21, BYU comes in at 23, the Fighting Red Raiders of Texas Tech at 24, and Boise State rounds out the top 25. We'll be joined shortly by Rob Browne of SEC Sidelines, and we'll take a look at maybe who's too high, who's too low, who's overrated, who's not, and that'll be part of our Hyper Have At It segment, So today, Zach Goodall was able to attend practice of Swamp 247. Had a few notes. Some notables were outside of practice, not participating, observe practice, that kind of thing, but not really involved. Those included Jaden Baugh, Trayon Webb, both running backs, wide receivers Aiden Mizell, Eugene Wilson, Khalil Jackson, tight end Tony Livingston, offensive lineman Enoch Wangoy, and cornerback Dijon Johnson. And a non-contact were wide receiver Muiz Tunkara, Grayson Howard at linebacker, and cornerback Jamrock Grimsley. How you doing, Rob?
Doing great. Listening to that injury list, but I mean, I'm with you guys. Everybody's getting, gonna be banged up at this time, and I think everybody's looking at what's happening. DJ Lagway, but you mentioned Jaden Baugh, and that's a guy that Billy Napier talked about in the strength and conditioning program is an elite talent. I mean, is he on that Freaks 100 list?
Yeah, I think so. And he also shout out to Jaden Baugh, who was named to the Doak Walker Award watch list. Obviously, the award for the top running back in the country, given out every year by the Doak Walker Foundation. And, a lot of big names. I don't think, did Emmitt Smith win the Doak? I'm not sure they've ever had a Doak Walker Award winner. If my man Dan Bond is online, check it out for me, Dan. But I don't think the Gators have ever had a Doak Walker Award winner.
And they've had some great running backs. I mean, some really good ones.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you're talking about guys like Fred Taylor, Emmitt Smith, Eric Rhett, and I'm not sure that
Neil Anderson,
yeah, that have never had hoisted that Doak Walker trophy. If it is foreign to me. But Rob, I know you saw the coaches poll. You guys discussed it a little earlier today. Did anything stick out to you with the coaches poll?
No, I mean, because we really shouldn't have, and I know why we do it. It's because of rankings for the fans, but we don't know until about the middle of October who the best teams are. I don't get worked up about coaches polls. You can see a team. Oh, the year when it was the worst was 2004 because Southern Cal and Oklahoma were 1 and 2 at the preseason poll, and they kept that pole position like talking like a NASCAR race the entire season.
Right.
So nobody else broke through there. But no,
Mhm.
I've got my top 6 in the SEC, and then there's another 5, and then that last group of 5 probably would be middle to top tier in most other conferences.
Yeah.
That's how good this league is.
Yeah, no doubt. And I don't know. I mean, are you like the top 10, Texas, Ohio State, Penn State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Clemson, Oregon, Alabama, LSU, and Miami? You buying Miami in the top 10, or
I'm
just
not.
kind of like, hey.
I'm not. I'm not buying Miami in the top 10. Mario Cristobal is an average to, maybe slightly above average coach with a really good roster. That's what he's been his whole career, and he's a great recruiter. So, okay, so you're telling me Mario can go to Fresh Market with $1,000 and get the best aged Angus chicken, fish, but he cooks like Uncle Charlie from My Three Sons when it comes to developing talent and being a coach. I mean, the Georgia Tech game, that's Exhibit A. How does that happen? That's just, and I'm not saying he's a bad guy. He's a hurricane, but I think Florida goes down there and drills down local in South Florida and gets a bunch of recruits out of that win.
Yeah, and according to Zach Goodall, talked about Florida and what is going on in practice and things like that. According to Zach Goodall, DJ Lagway is basically a full participant. They don't hit the quarterbacks anyway, but he missed the first 3 practices due to a calf strain, but was seen throwing today. Obviously, Jaden Wilson and wide receivers Aiden Mizell and Eugene Wilson III were out, as well as tight end Tony Livingston, who's going to be looked at for the to really carry this thing. But I think what stood out to those that observe practices is the way that this defensive line is starting to work. Guys like Cameron James and others. And I think if you look at this Florida team, Rob, the defensive line is the one question mark that can they repeat those last 4 games of the year and really take the next step. Everybody seems to think that if this defense, coached by Gerald Chapman, who was really, did a great job at Tulane with their sack numbers, where it was able to increase the Florida sack numbers almost 3 times the sacks. If this unit can perform and stay healthy, a lot of people think this defense is ready to take the next step.
Well, remember when this was a tackle league? You wanted a nose guard, 2 defensive tackles. You had defensive ends. Now they're just called edge rushers. Tyreek Sapp, Fort Myers. That's a badass. That is a full-grown man that has stuck around a long time. That's what you got to have nowadays. Your front 7 better be good. The good old days, just a couple of years ago, 2 and 3 deep. But I want to go back to that top 10. Ohio State, they got a great program. We all know that. Had a great last week. But no, them at number 2, you're hung over looking out of the rearview mirror. They got to replace too many people. And I think Texas goes up there and gets a win. By the end of the season, I think they'll be a really good team. But
so you calling the Texas win out the gate?
Yeah, I am. And I think Texas's offense will be really good. But I think their defense, man, their defense is really good. And I think that's what Florida at 17 is low. Florida at about 12.
Yeah, I mean,
you telling me Miami's better than Florida? I really don't believe it.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, with everything Florida, Miami does bring back a lot up front. The offensive line did have some losses, and Florida is now under the control of what some people think could be the best quarterback in the country. And we'll have James Virgilio joining us from the Gator Nation football podcast to break down, really what makes DJ Lagway go. But yeah, I mean, you look at 17. I mean, the beautiful thing about it is these things shake out. I was a little surprised. Are you buying South Carolina?
I had a great discussion with a wise friend of mine in Atlanta today. No, I think they're good. And I think Lenore Sellers is really good. He's got tape on people. They got tape on him. But you got to replace 5 guys off that defense that were drafted. They're going to be good. I think they'll win minimum 8 games, maybe 9. To get on top, Lenore Sellers has got to grow up real fast. And I think it's like these preseason polls. They're taking the last day of media days. People are trying to catch flights, get home. It's like taking a test on the last day before Christmas break.
Right.
Your Christmas tree, and you're going, get me out of here.
Well, it's funny because, and we could probably do a whole show on that too. It really gives us something to talk about. Because, let's face it, Rob, what would we talk about if we didn't have that? We could talk about, for instance, Jaden Baugh, Trayon Webb, Aiden Mizell, Eugene Wilson being out. But at this juncture, that could just be the rest of legs. It could be they know what they have in those guys. So do you put them out there? You got some young guys, receiver, let them get the reps. Could it be tree shaking time? Maybe a little bit, but J. Michael Sturdivant is still out there. Dallas Wilson is still out there. Hayden Hansen is still out there. They still got Jacoby Jackson. They still got KD Daniels. There's a lot that you can still get done. And the thing that I like is, once again, when you talk about a defense trying to make the next step, minus a guy like Pup Howard, who you kind of already know what you got.
Yeah.
The defense right now, knock on wood, is pretty healthy and, seems to be rounding in the form a little bit.
Hey, as far as preseason polls, I go back to what Coach Tuberville used to say. And he said they're purely for the fans. And that's fine. And it's a lot of good fodder. But, when Dave Bartu's on our show on Mondays, College Football Matrix, follow this guy. He's amazing. And he does so much with staffs and rosters, with analytics and numbers. Loren, football. You've got an IQ football probably 186. Okay, I'm serious. It's savant-like. And my dad always called me an idiot savant. And I'm going, he goes, boy, that just means you got a lot of knowledge in there. Find out a way to turn it into money. But football really well. You've coached it. You look at the Florida offensive line. It starts with your center, Jake Slaughter. Have people today arguing Parker Brailsford. He might be the transfer from Washington. He may be the best center in the country. Connor Lew at Auburn's pretty good. I'm sticking with Slaughter, and I think Parker Brailsford's good. But I like a homegrown guy from Marion County. He's dialed in. Another thing with Florida, L.J. McCray, Pup Howard, transferred from South Carolina. Billy Napier. I like to listen to what he says. He's very easy to follow because he talks real slow. Real slow. But he says, we got a lot of guys in this building, been here for 2, 3, 4 years, and there's a lot of relationships built in there. Remember when everybody was talking about how many people Florida had on staff, bigger than the actual roster in the team picture? You ain't hearing that anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's right. And it speaks to, you look at the evaluation of talent, a guy like Jacoby Jackson, who was a no-star. You find those diamonds in the rough. Jaden Woods, a guy from Kansas. These talent evaluators, and I've said this as hard as I've been on Billy Napier, when I meet a member of the staff and I meet these folks, I've always been impressed with the people that he's put around him, which I think has led to some of the head scratching that we've had with this football team, is because there are really, how do you have a better running back coach than Jabbar Jalou? Do you have a better receiver coach than Billy Gonzalez? You feel, you have a strong, respect for a guy like Ron Roberts, The question has always, Rob Sale, heck of a football coach, played on the national title team, played for Saban, has been under that umbrella, been with Billy for quite some time. And it's like, it just doesn't make sense. How do these things keep happening? with such great coaches. I mean, there's guys like Chad Lucas who helps Billy with the receivers, really good coach. Coach Johnson who helps Coach Sale, out of Jacksonville, played at Rutgers, played, I mean, he's got some solid on the field guys. And now you had a guy like Steve Spurrier Jr. I mean, just more and more people that are affecting this program. And it's like, it doesn't make sense when you see what you thought would be underachieving. And now they got the roster to do it, Rob. I mean, we keep talking about these names, and I agree. I think they're a little low at 17, but I think some of it is recency bias, maybe.
Absolutely.
And, if you want to talk about it, little bit of recency bias, maybe, just because they have, in a lot of people's eyes, underachieved as a program,
Well, that's part of it, but the roster had to be rebuilt. Culture had to be installed. It takes a minimum 2 years to install a culture. Then you
Right.
get a bunch of guys on staff, and you know this in sales, what you and I do outside of this, 80, 100-hour work week. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Ain't no 8 to 5 crap. All my people have my cell phone number. I get a
Right.
call sometimes 5:30 in the morning on the way out to the duck blind, and it's a client. I'm taking that call. I can assure you, I'll miss the hunt. Mallards could be pouring in with their feet out 10 feet in front of them. I'm taking that call. You got a staff, guys that played for Nick Saban, coached with Nick Saban, like Billy Napier, like Sale. They're used to it.
Right.
But I'll tell you, the best coaches that you ever see, the football building, there's toys all over the place. There's kids running everywhere because they're going, look, this is a big commitment. So your children are welcome up here. We've got play areas and bounce houses and stuff like that. Everybody that I've talked to that knows Billy Napier, like Ellis Johnson, he's known him since he was 21 years old, will vouch for him. I keep hearing that. And I know last year I was critical too. But you know what? You're also first-class guy, Loren. If you say something and you go back and say, you know what, I was wrong, they're better here or there, whatever. And you reserve the right to do that. But you're right. Billy Gonzalez, coaching those receivers. What did Eugene Wilson have? 10 catches, 194 yards in the spring game? He wasn't going up against air, was he?
Dallas Wilson.
Yeah, Dallas Wilson. I'm sorry, Dallas Wilson. But, he came from Oregon because my friend Matt's son signed him up there at Oregon. He was like, what's he doing? You're leaving. But such is life. And when the home state school calls, that's a big deal. But I'm with you. I love these rankings because we can tear them apart. I'll tell you another one, Michigan at 14. Why are they in the top 25?
Yeah. They're in our hyper have at it, so we can kind of see where you're no, but I get it. No, I'm with you. I mean, there's a lot to unpack, and looking at we'll look at a few teams that may or may not be involved and ready to go. But and this kind of leads us into where we're going next. David Baldoff says, "You're telling me that Carson Beck is better than Lagway." And I'm not necessarily sure that's an indictment on, Lagway versus Carson Beck, that Miami's ranked 10th. I think, if you look at last year's game, albeit Cam Ward is gone and others, but I think it's a situation where, you look at this team and Lagway is just a small piece of the puzzle. And we're going to bring in James Virgilio to talk about DJ Lagway a little bit more in depth. And, I think it'll maybe, he can answer a little bit about, where Carson Beck fits versus DJ Lagway. But how you doing, James?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Man,
Great.
Long time coming. Glad to have you on.
It feels like it's been a long time coming or a short time coming. And hearing you guys in like mid-season form right now just makes me think what's looming around the corner,
No. So, for those of you who don't know, James does the Gator Nation football podcast. During the season, does a great job of breaking down the X and O's, taking some of the key plays, both on offense, defense, even sometime on special teams, just to give a little flavor, but, has a real good mind for what the teams are doing, what the defense is trying to do, and just, really breaks down what each team is trying to accomplish on each play and where, the good, the bad, and sometimes the ugly with some of these things. But just a quick background, James, how did you get involved in breaking these things down, and just what's the experience been like as you've grown? Because I think I first picked you up in the Mullen era, and now, you've kind of seen things kind of progress into where Billy Napier has this team now.
Yeah, that's a great question. Started the podcast 12 years ago now, and it was just a podcast, and I did not have access to film. And back then, it was hard to even get a good cut of any all 22 shot in a TV broadcast, even just 12 years ago in college football. And so, as fortune had it, about 7 years ago, I did get access to the all 22 coaches film. And that was obviously immensely helpful. And it allowed me to be able to say some things that you wouldn't be able to say if you couldn't see what was actually going on in the back end of the film. And that happened during the Mullen era. And then kind of hilariously, the team found out about it. They got their feathers ruffled a bit that there was some person unrelated to the football program putting out film review, which I always found kind of personally funny, only because every coach is doing the same thing when it comes to cutting up and breaking up film. And the NFL for a long time makes the all 22 publicly available, and they're not worried the three of us are going to go into the film and craft some kind of game plan. But that got them ruffled. My YouTube channel, which was like a year old, got shut down. I had to restart it. And that was kind of the sign, I think. And the reason I'm telling that story was that was when I realized that people really wanted this stuff. In fact, I had a call at the time with a couple of people from some media networks saying, "Hey, we're surprised how much traction you're getting on these like in-depth film breakdowns." And even some on-air talent at the time from some major networks had come across me, messaged me and said, "Yeah, man, I wish I could do this stuff, but XYZ network thinks it's not wanted. Like they limit me to a 20-second soundbite." And now here we are in 2025, where of course this stuff is all over the place, right? It's so ubiquitous. People are breaking stuff down in depth. So that's kind of the quick background, but really I always love finding solutions, right? I'm a strategist for a living with being an investor. I love sports, and film tells you in a large and sometimes difficult way that, your team is either good or bad or indifferent, but it does help you understand where you might be going. And that's why I like it. Cut through the clutter. Where are we going? Are we getting better? What's happening in the film? As I like to say in the channel, the film really doesn't lie.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what we are in coaching, Rob. We always say the eye in the sky don't lie. You can tell me what you did. I tell guys, I'd say something on Friday, and and I said Monday morning, and they knew what I was talking about. So it wasn't. I didn't have to say anything else. I just look at it and say, "Hey, Monday morning," and then we'd be sitting in the back and be watching, and something would happen. They turn their head, and I just say silently, when we grading the film. So yeah, that eye in the sky doesn't lie. But speaking of the eye in the sky, James, you were able to get a good look at probably the most popular guy in Florida sports in a really long time, in DJ Lagway. And I know we don't, for those of us that know the game, and you're not ready to roll with the tape, but you did get a good look at DJ Lagway. And I think so much is looked at the big plays, the wow plays, him shrugging the guy off against Florida State, making some of the plays under duress against Ole Miss, and even the drive against Tennessee that I thought was really huge for a young man to climb the pocket, basically make an off-platform throw for a strike to basically tie the game. But when you really look at DJ Lagway, tell us what, to you, what stands out. What does he really do well? What can he work on in year 2, year 1 as a full-time starter? And just where this young man could go, as he develops.
Yeah, well, it's the most exciting thing, as you mentioned, in Florida football in a while now. I loved Kyle Trask. My love for Kyle Trask is not secret. It's all over the podcast during that time. It was all over the film review. It's still there to be seen. Really loved him as a college quarterback, and maybe one day he'll get a chance in the NFL. But Lagway, right away, first game we can analyze. Went on the channel, told my co-host, look, everyone knows I love quarterbacks, and I'm going to say a lot of really positive things. And of course, you get this is great, followed by people filling my inbox with, of course, you're just going to puff up this guy. which is funny because, really I like to just puff up, I think, guys who had skills. And Lagway immediately had so many high-level quarterback skills, especially in the pocket on time. And I chronicled that from game one. That stayed throughout the year. And so his greatest strength, I think, is the beginning of what's happening on a play. And then his second greatest strength, like a barbell, is what happens if he's under pressure early in the play. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But all in all, he throws on time. He's a full field reader. As a freshman, he was pretty early on. He's comfortable, especially with making quick decisions when his pre-snap read is good. He throws on platform very well, and he obviously throws an excellent deep ball. A few of his major issues that I chronicled all year long, one surprising, others not so surprising. The not surprising stuff is going to be what happens after that initial, you get down, your back foot hits, you're ready to throw. What happens then? That's where being a veteran and getting reps is going to help you more. A lot of times he'll start throwing off platform. If he resets, it's not clean. If he climbs, it's not clean. He'll reset. He'll throw sideways. He'll do weird stuff. He can make that work, but that does drive his inaccuracy. But the really surprising thing about a guy like Lagway, who I believe to be a cerebral quarterback, is he struggled last year so mightily versus drop 8 coverages. The numbers are actually amazing to see just how much he struggled. I'll give you a few numbers here. They're right in front of me, but his rating versus the 5-man rush, or really any blitz at all, is above 100. So he's 107 and 110 there. That goes to a scale of like 145. So he was roughly top 25 in the country versus the blitz. Depending on the certain pressure, it could have been higher than that. When you talked about just him facing a 3-man rush, he was 85th in the Power 5. Wow. So right down in the bottom 10% with a 37 rating, which is as bad as you can possibly get. He threw a pick 1 every 9.5 passes, had no touchdowns, and just got trounced versus drop 8. Now, that does not seem to make sense. Big arm guy, cerebral guy. Drop 8, you should be fine. But he also took a lot of pressure, 40th in pressure rate when he was facing off in a drop 3. And lastly, facing the blitz, he was excellent versus pressure. So you would think, okay, if he's getting pressure with a 3-man rush, what's happening? Well, the answer is perhaps surprising, perhaps not so surprising, that as a young quarterback who played in high school, was often hitting his first or second read. And if he got to his third read and he escaped, big arm, big downfield throw. Some of those throws are not available in college. Some of those picks happened because in large part, he's seeing more complicated zone drops. Against Tennessee on the road, he threw a really ill-advised pick only because he's a freshman. Bounced back, didn't throw that same pick again. But this continued all the way until the end of the year, including the bowl game versus Tulane. He played a ton of drop 8, and he had one of his worst games. So I wanted to end with that to say, I certainly hope that DJ, and I imagine he did, spent the entire offseason at least cerebrally trying to figure out how to do better versus these drop 8 coverages. That was his major weakness last season. Most everything else on film was a strength, or you can see is going to be a strength. But versus drop 8, it's hard to find any positive film where you say, okay, he's got this figured out. He was definitely lost all season long versus that kind of coverage.
Rob, and Rob, I think it speaks to a guy you're very familiar with. And I think he had to learn this even as he got to the next level. One Cam Newton, who was really good at when I call them him throws. When I'm throwing to him and I've got man coverage and I've got to put a ball where only my guy can get it, really good at it. But then when you start to see the complicated coverages, even if you point to the national championship game, talking about Cam Newton against Oregon, where I think Oregon did, do a little, some spine, some drop 8 to kind of keep him contained. That was their lowest output basically all year, even against a team like Alabama. When you look at Lagway, I think that's where, when Billy Napier talks about giving them the homework and looking at, some of their worst plays and breaking things down, I would assume, Rob, that a lot of that was involved in that homework.
Well, I mean, in that game against Oregon in 2010, Cam had like 527 yards of offense, but he felt like he didn't have a great game, and he didn't. Oregon's pretty damn good. They were averaging, 315 yards a game rushing with DJ James, running back out of Texarkana. Auburn held them to 75. That's because you had Nick Fairley. and Antoine Carter and some guys. But going back to what James is saying, I love this kind of stuff. I've been a financial advisor 34 years. I can look at scattergrams and tranches, dead cat bounces in the market. I talk like that to my clients. They're going, "Oh, son, speak English to me." I'm talking about gigabytes and DRAM. That is a cool stat that you gave, though, what you call drop 8 coverage. And I'm not going to sit there and tell you that I'm a football X's and O's savant. I got a pretty good grasp of it, but I will rely on people smarter than me, like both of y'all. But that's an area that a great quarterback will go back and focus his study time on, watching that tape. And the really good ones, the great ones, spend that extra time when they don't have to be there. I love what I'm beginning to really like Billy Napier's press conferences. There are not a lot of them, but he talks about things that require no talent, being early, doing the little things off the field when we're not watching. And if DJ Lagway's doing that, what you talked about being problems last year should not be this year. And that guy asking, is he better than Carson Beck? I mean, athletically, I think he is.
Just I think, you look at it, and I think that's where you look at some of those things, and you saw, I think, last year's, cocktail party, Florida was able to do some things with some robber coverage, some different, looks to take some of those intermediate throws away that Carson Beck had success with the year before. And I think it was almost like you now you see it, now you don't. And if you're late with the ball, things like that, you saw some of those picks. Yeah. And really Florida should have had those the year before, but, didn't make some of the plays. But yeah, I mean, as before we move on, James, when you look at that and you see, the struggles and that kind of thing, what is it that if I'm gonna give you your Ryan O'Hara, your Billy Napier, and now when we look at those things, yes, DJ Lagway can take a look at it, but what can we as coaches maybe help him with in game where it really matters to maybe eliminate some of those issues?
Yeah, I think that is in fact part of the solution and part of the problem with DJ's performance last year. Obviously, you can get really in depth with some very interesting stats. I talked a lot about last season on DJ Lagway's deep throw rate, his completion percentage, how those are historically high for Billy Napier offenses. Napier offenses do take shots down the field, but not with the level of success that Lagway's had, not even close. And so the first question you ask is that success because Billy's changed? I emphatically would argue no, it's the same exact offense, but DJ is that good at making those throws. What I'm saying that for is Billy's offense is more of what I would consider to be a Swiss Army knife philosophy, a little more old school, if you will, where you have a play, that play might work against 4 or 5 different coverages, and you might have different routes that beat each one. You may not be more in the Spurrier mold where you're trying to hit the absolute home run play versus a certain coverage, and then you might audible to the second one, right? Of course, Napier gives his quarterback the opportunity to make changes. Those things are all true, but philosophically, it's a bit more of the Swiss Army knife. And I think when you're playing a team that drops 8, and you might have what I'm going to call 2 dead routes on the field, which Florida has frequently, if you look at their route tree, either guys standing close to each other, or a running back or a receiver on like a jet sweep flat out to nowhere, then you're basically sending 3 viable receivers out versus 8 defenders. And that's not great math. Now, you might argue the 49ers do this pretty well. They do, but they also have a really excellent tight end, which Florida has yet to have in the Napier era, and he yet to seemingly recruits or goes after one that you might think would open up that part of the field. So I say all that to say, I do think there's a lot that can be done versus drop 8 coverage to help a quarterback like Lagway. I think Lagway is a cerebral quarterback. I don't think that him and Cam Newton play the game the same way with how they want to play the game, right? I think Cam wanted to play the game as an athlete, as you mentioned. He wanted to be an athlete. He wanted to throw the ball to his guy. I think Lagway wants to command the whole field. I think he wants to be a trigger man. He wants to be a distributor and then be an athlete second, and he's a tremendous athlete. So that's the curious part, is a guy like that should shred a drop 8 coverage. So we're going to find out, I think, relatively quickly. I'm pretty sure that every coach that's going to face us this year knows those stats, understands that he struggles with that. And to both of your points and to all of our thoughts, I am sure that Lagway spent a ton of time on this, and I'm sure Billy is thinking about it. I have yet to see on film Billy make what I would consider to be any significant adjustments to his offense to tailor it towards any one of his quarterbacks. We've seen AR, we've seen Mertz, we've now seen Lagway. If you roll the film on the offense, there is not a lot of variation. Those are three very different guys with how they want to play. Now, Mertz threw a lot of checkdowns, but the routes weren't all checkdowns. He just grew to prefer the checkdowns because he just could not hit the deeper throws. But the routes are similar. So I'm saying this to say it is my hope that there's a little bit more crafting for who Lagway is and what he can do and what we might see, rather than more of the Swiss Army knife. I've got the playbook. It's here. We're going to run this stuff, and that's how we're going to do it. We're going to make it work, right? Kind of the athletes will make it happen kind of stuff. So that's going to be the big question mark, I think, heading into this season. But I do think, to your point, there are things coaches can do to help their players, especially if they know there's a weakness there they might see.
Right. And we're going to get to that in a minute as we continue to break down the offense with James D. Virgilio, Rob Browne of SEC Sidelines. But we want to talk about our sponsor, Meldon Law, the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators, proven and skilled lawyers since 1971. You know, it's that time of year where the Meldons will be giving away tickets to games, everything from, you know, volleyball to football to just a lot of different prize packs. You can go there. They can point you in the right direction. If they're not able to help you with your law needs, they can point you in the right direction to someone. They helped me with some estate planning, put me in line with somebody that was able to help. And just great supporters of the Florida Gators, from the band to every sport in between. Ran into them at the Final Four, and you know, just out there having a good time supporting the Florida Gators. And once again, the only official law firm of the Florida Gators, proven and skilled lawyers since 1971. Meldon Law, we won't back down. And as we do every week, James, you could be part of this, but every week, this is Rob's favorite. We bring out, so I don't know how your shoe game is, but mine is pretty slick. So that's kind of my plug. We're trying to get a StockX or a flight club. But Rob, I'm trying to impress you. 2017, Rob, the Foamposite Heather Gray, 2017.
I like that.
You know,
Those
shout
are
out
good.
to Memphis's own Penny Hardaway, who made the Foamposites famous. But I don't know if you can see that, Rob. That's a sweatshirt material. You
That
know,
is cool.
like Bill Belichick. So, you know, Flight Club, StockX, GOAT, give us a holler, man. We definitely would love to have you. And that's the kicks of the week. Rob, I got a surprise for you. So when we get into August, I'm gonna give you some game day kicks, some of the kicks that I wear on game day. So
Love it.
Kind of Florida Gator theme. But anyway, so James, the Florida offense, when you talked about it, Swiss Army knife, one size fits all, maybe, or doesn't fit all. What's good about it? And when we talk about a guy like Lagway, what is something they do? And you brought up a good point, and I've said this too, not necessarily publicly. I hope I don't get in trouble for it. But those wasted, what I call waste players, like you said, a jet sweep to nowhere, RB orbit motion to nowhere. And, you know, every now and then I'd like to see him go ahead and spill it out there to that guy, get on the perimeter, see if we can outflank some people, make some people miss. But that doesn't seem to necessarily be the plan there. I know a lot of it is what I call window dressing or information processing that is there for that. I mean, that's as old as motion, you know, in the game has been, but it seems like that is something, you know, when you talk about drop eight, you waste a guy out there, not, you know, it's kind of like he's out there. But if you look at that combined with the two tight ends, and you mentioned, you know, not necessarily, I mean, we hope that Hayden Hansen, you know, with his frame could create certain mismatches. You got Tony Livingston, former basketball background, you know, kind of a little better athlete there. But what is this offense to you, and what makes it, if anything, what makes it so good? If when it's good, what makes it good?
Well, I mean, I think the offense would best be described historically under Napier throughout his entire career really as mid. And that's been one of the frustrating, I'd call it like a pain point with the Napier era for me is, I've definitely been in the camp of he should be hiring an offensive coordinator. He needs a specialist there. Obviously, it's come to bear that he loves offense. I think that's primarily why he coaches football. He kind of talks about that. He wants to call the plays, he wants to be involved. And so I think he's going to die on that hill one way or the other. It's going to be the reason he succeeds or the reason he fails. But I think unequivocally, he is a very, very skilled run game coordinator. Solid design, very good coach of how to coach the run game. Florida is amongst the best in the country every year in running split zone, which is pretty impressive. Again, going back to the fact that they don't really use their tight ends a lot. So the fact that you're able to get your tight end who's playing in an H-back role behind the line, coming across in motion and being so effective split blocking is a bit surprising because we're not doing much off of that, to your point, in the play action game. But a very, very good run game coordinator. And I think the passing game is what often lets Florida down, especially in tight tendencies, tight situations. It tends not to be able to create enough to support the run game versus a team that can stop the run. I do think, though, the Swiss Army knife, I think in Billy's mind, it's a matter of acquiring resources. So I think if Billy were here right now, he would say, I haven't had the offense where I wanted it to be, but I haven't had the guys I've wanted either. So this year, Florida expects to have a much better offensive line. They should have the by far the most vertical oriented receiver room they've had, a lot more speed there. And I think maybe he's going to imagine he has what he needs now to be able to make the offense work. I would counter that by saying, in his entire career, a stat I love called success rate, which is how well you're doing per play, he's just only ever been average. And last year was, below average. And so it's hard for me to imagine we're going to take this major step forward. But look, quarterbacks are transcendent in college football. They can carry you to places you've never been before. You guys talked about Auburn. That's never happening without Cam Newton. So I think for Florida fans, I'm hoping that DJ can do enough to overcome what might still be the Swiss Army average offense. But make no mistake about it, Florida's run game is good. The split game is excellent. It's amongst the best in the country. I think that's what Billy's really good at.
And, Rob, that's what I talk about with that split zone, and James could break it down. But what I call the stress on the eyes that the split zone can create, the stress on those second level players to where if you guess wrong, that thing comes out the back door and it's off and running, with that split zone. But, I think this is where, and I try not to get in it, but if you're just looking at it, and that's why I like having James on, you just look at it at face value, Rob, everybody just sees it like it's running into walls. But a lot of times with that run game, it's like the old adage, like Novocaine, give it time and it works. I think that's some of what Napier kind of hangs his hat on, Rob, to kind of see, to get that going and kind of dominate the line of scrimmage and even time of possession in a lot of ways. I even heard him say back when he was at LSU, we're going to run the ball, play good defense, and go home. Excuse me, Louisiana.
Yeah.
So I think that's where, you have that, but now you have this phenomenon at the quarterback position that hopefully can even enhance that menu a little bit, Rob.
Well, James is talking about wasted players. You got 4 or 5 wideouts and only, 2 of them are doing nothing on a play. I mean, what you're trying to do, and there's a shelf life to every offense and every defense. Usually it's about 3 years max. And, Gus Malzahn is exhibit A on that one. I mean, just keep doing the same thing over and over. People figure you out. You better change. But what you do with a running game, I love the running game because you can suffocate a team in the fourth quarter if you've got a big lead. And that's what changed Florida football under Steve Spurrier when he brought in Bob Stoops in 96, 97, and 98. He won a national championship the first year. And again, I go back to 3 of the greatest running backs Florida's ever had. You had Eric Rhett out of Pembroke Pines, Florida, Fred Taylor out of Belle Glade, and Ernest Graham out of Fort Myers or Naples, I think it was. But they don't get enough credit for what they did for Florida because once they started choking people in the fourth quarter and they were gasping for air, Florida ended up, the stats, wouldn't y'all say, were close to almost 50-50. And you had Riddell Anthony, you had Ike Hilliard, you had Percy Harvin later on under, Urban Meyer, but you got to have those guys that can do both things. And I think this is fascinating, James, what you're talking about, because it is so cool to look at tape, film. It's tape now, but I mean, the full 22, when you get to go into a coach's office, and which is rare, but we've all done it, and they're watching that big screen, and you're going, that ain't what my TV set looks like into about 10 Hams beers.
Right.
During a game. I'm seeing Bigfoot. But anyway, this is the kind of stuff that having it on this show is what makes this an awesome show. I'm just curious, either one of y'all can tell me this. Billy Napier, you say he needs an offensive coordinator. Chip Kelly at Oregon, he was the guy. Nick Saban at Alabama was the guy. Now Billy Napier coached under Dabo at Clemson, under Nick Saban at Alabama. Does he think he's that guy? I mean, if he does, look at that staff he's got, and the better staff he gets, I think the more he can actually coach as opposed to, trying to manage people. Is that a fair assessment? Because as he gets more involved, the recruiting last year went from 62nd. In the last couple of weeks, they finished 7th in the country.
Well, I think, and I'll kick it to James real quick. I think two things. One, no, I don't think he thinks he's the man. I think he's far too humble for that. I think it just, in his mind, being the primary play caller works for him. And when you think that, it's very hard to let that go. Now, I will say that I think way too much blame is put on Napier for a play call and maybe not enough for the whole group. Because I could tell you met the guy I coached with last week, Rob. Mm-hmm. It is a community game plan. It is anybody that, is going. And then I will say this, and I'll kick this to James, and he can agree or disagree. I think they run really good stuff, and James noted that, but a lot of times it's when they call it. I thought the play to tie the game against Tennessee, very well planned out, set well, formation, time call, time to call it was excellent. But then you get like the entire sample size of the Miami game. And I think, James, I was so sick, I didn't even watch you that week because it was just like, and I sat with some people, some Florida alumni, and they were just like, are you kidding me right now? Like what was that? And we're sitting at a place, and I saw him out, and we're sitting and drawing stuff on napkins. Like, what is that? What is he reading? What's his read? Where's his first look? And, the execution looked poor, but the design was just as poor. So, James, I guess I had this argument with a friend of mine. I think they run good stuff. I'm just not sure, A, personnel is feasible for some of it, and B, the timing of the calls is what's best, what is ideal.
Yeah, there's so much nuance to that. There's a lot of preference in football. There's a lot of different ways to win. And so I think it's known amongst, people that have watched me for any time that I love the passing game. I prefer it to be vertical and open. I think that works for the state of Florida. I think Billy's offense is maybe not necessarily the perfect marriage for a Florida football team, but it can work for sure. You can win this way, right? I think those things are true. And I want to say those things first because it can be done. But I think when it comes to how you feel about the design, some of its preference, I always say the trump card is production. And that to me is what matters, right? You might run an offense that I might not like, but if you are producing, if your metrics are there, if you're winning games, if you're consistent, hey, it's winning, it's working. Maybe it's not my preferred movie, but it's winning and it's working. I think the tough thing for Billy is it's a bit of a counter style to how Florida that is still, let's call it, Steve Spurrier's team. Really, most Florida fans still want to be scoring a lot of points. They want to have an exciting offense. They want to throw the football. His offense is more run-oriented first. He does want to take deep shots, but when it's not working, it's ugly. And I think you hit that point just a second ago when you said after the Miami game, you're looking at it and you're thinking, man, this stuff doesn't look good. And that's true of any offense. But I think for me, I just think that the passing game could just use whatever word you want to use, some more creativity, some modernization, some some different, more tactical concepts where you're trying to hit home runs. You're trying to give your quarterback easier throws. And I'll give you one simple example of this. Quite amazingly, and this year is going to be a big time test for it, Florida has basically never marched 4 receivers out on the field at the same time. Now, I don't mean we haven't had 5 people standing out in positions at receiver, but we typically have 1 or 2 tight ends and a running back. We have not done this this year. It does not take a football savant to see that Florida's wide receiver room is deep and talented.
Yeah.
Their tight end room is shallow and not a lot of depth there. If we're going to run out a 5-wide set and it's going to be a running back and 2 tight ends, I just have an impossible time justifying that as the best use of resources. And so that, I think, has been a recurring frustration for me, is like, hey, you can run stuff. Of course, almost every college football coach, all college football coaches in the Power 4 are going to be running concepts that you see on Sundays every single week, to your point, right? They're not out here just running like a basic peewee play. But how you apply it, how you use it, how you set it up is what makes you a good offense or not. How you teach it, how your routes are being run, the spacing, all of these things matter. And I think that is the question mark for this season. Can the bet Billy is making on himself and on what he believes to be a good offense, can that pay off for him? It has not paid off yet in his career. And I'm rooting for Billy. I think he's an exceptional A+ kind of guy. I think everyone thinks that. I have been critical of him, mainly because it's really hard to see the evidence for him doing something he's never done before. But I hope he does. And I hope he gets whatever he needs to get done, whether it's his current system or something different. But I have a hard time describing his passing offense as something as threatening, difficult to prepare for, or dangerous. I think if Florida's going to be successful this year, they're going to have to win a lot of close games. And I think Billy might want to win that way anyway, right? Fourth quarter mantra, grind people out, beat them with physicality. Those are all things guys say that want to impose their will on you and they want to beat you in the fourth quarter. And I think that is more of his mentality. So I think we have to expect that and hope that Florida can get that done. I think Lagway is the kind of guy, though, that can get that done. He is the kind of guy you want in the fourth quarter. Quarterbacks make a difference in close games. And hopefully, if he stays healthy, Florida can do that this season.
Yeah, and I can honestly say, and without throwing sources out there or anything like that, that is a distinct possibility that you may see 4 guys at 6'2", 195 pounds actually run out, and the H is 5'10", 185. The Y is, you actually have, what you might consider a true spread group, 10 personnel. We talked about that. And and could even open the running game, because you could still do some things with that, and you can be balanced, you can RPO with it. I mean, it gives you a lot of flexibility, particularly with some guys that are really creative with the ball in their hands at that receiver position. So which a lot of times I call them long handoffs. Those long handoffs go for 20, 30 yards when you can make that goose miss. And now you pressing and now everybody got to go chasing. So, I think that's something that they definitely have the tools to get that done with. But we're going to skip hyper have at it for tonight. It was just say who's rated and overrated. We can get to that next week. But Rob, as always, who you got on tomorrow's show?
We got to start off with Barry Trammell, great legendary sports writer, formerly of the Daily Oklahoma, now the Tulsa Star. You've seen him along with Kirk Bowles and about Wishbone on SEC Network. He covers Oklahoma. We'll start with him. Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net. Vince Ferrara, recovering at Mama Ferrara's in Tampa from hip surgery, covering Tennessee, but we'll cover all 16 of the SEC schools. But damn, James, you are really good. And I can see why you got a great podcast, because you look at it like tracking a stock or market trends. You're very smart. And that's a Florida degree on the wall, isn't it? It's worth a hell of a lot.
It is, yes.
And a Wharton degree.
I appreciate that. Very
you went to Wharton. There you go.
I didn't know. Yeah, big time. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Doubt. But
that's not supposed to be there. I don't have a cool podcasting room like you guys have. I should put the decor.
James, I recognize talent when I see it. Yeah. That's outstanding.
James, let them know where they can find you during the season, when you're going to start up, and just let us know what you got going on.
Yeah, we'll be back. Gator Nation Football Podcast starts up on August 18th. The podcast is done every single Monday. You can just pop that right into your podcast feed. It'll pull up. And the film review will begin in earnest right after the first LIU game, and it will carry on all the way throughout the entire season. You can find that on YouTube or Patreon. I also post clips on Twitter of the 3 or 4 best plays each week.
Okay, and maybe you'll come back and give us 2 or 3 of those as well this season.
It's great.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. Really enjoyed having you guys on. There's Rob Browne of SEC Sidelines, James D. Virgilio of Gator Nation Football Podcast. I'm your host, Loren Meadows, the Lowdown with Loren Meadows. Catch me on GatorBaitMedia.com and other platforms. Appreciate you guys coming out, and we'll see you next week. As you like this, Rob, recording live from somewhere. See you guys next week.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. An honor.